In this video, we're going to talk about what the best foods for weight loss is. We're going to go through 5 food groups. We're going to talk about the food that makes us fat, and we're going to finish up by showing you a really clever way to put together all these food groups onto a simple plate of food that's going to help you keep you full, help you lose weight, and help you thrive. Particularly good for a dinner plate. Now, this is the second video in our Fat Loss Framework series. We're starting off the kind of nutrition levers, the ways that you can adjust your nutrition to lose weight, and we're kicking off with food because food is glorious. So let us get into it. We're going to start off with the food that makes us fat. So first and foremost, it's really kind of clever to understand the food that makes us kind of fat and makes us overeat so we can reverse engineer it to help us lose weight. A really kind of simple graphic to show you like one of the major drivers, not the only driver, but one of the major drivers of weight gain over the last 40 years in the US and around the world is simple, overeating calories. We're eating more often and we're eating hyperpalatable foods which allow us to overeat. And now when I say hyperpalatable foods, the underlying driver of this excess intake of calories is the combination of cheap flour, cheap oil, a little bit of sugar, a little bit of salt. It's basically processed food. Processed food is the #1 driver of overeating, and a lot of it is occurring outside of the normal mealtime. So basically we're snacking ourselves into obesity with really cheap, crappy food. We're surrounded by it. There's a massive incentive for companies to make this food because it's non-perishable, cheap inputs, addictive, high output price. They're basically making a killing in selling food that makes us overeat. So how can we reverse engineer this? We're going to go with 5 food groups. We're starting off with the absolute no-brainer, which is lean protein. Eating more protein and eating lean protein in particular is just a no-brainer when it comes to trying to lose weight. Yes, it's a little bit annoying, a little bit expensive, but it will naturally help you control your calorie intake. I'll show a graph now of a study where they increased the percentage of energy from 15 to 30%, and people just spontaneously reduce their calorie intake by like 400 or 500 calories a day, and they drop 5 or 6 kilos over 12 weeks. So lean protein, absolute no-brainer. Most people have a positive skew with their protein. They eat more protein at dinner. Try and even out so you get some solid protein breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Next up, colourful veggies. Veggies are wonderful. They're super nutritious. They're pretty much the only food group everyone agrees about, really. Maybe some carnivores don't, but they're absolutely wonderful. And the way that they're wonderful for weight loss is they give you loads of volume for very few calories, which creates a stretch reflex in your stomach. So very low caloric density gives you loads of volume. It creates a stretch reflex in your stomach. This sends a hormonal signal to your hindbrain, which then tricks into your brain and tells you, I'm actually quite full because I've got this distended stomach. And that is the power of veggies. And when I say colourful veggies, I'm just kind of ruling out the starchy ones. So not talking about potatoes or corn or even carrots to a degree. We're talking about green, voluminous veggies, full of micronutrition, wonderful for your health, epic. So get more colourful veggies in. Natural fats. When we're looking at fat's really confusing. People will often say that, fat is super filling. Actually, fat is not that filling in general. It really comes down to what type of fat you're eating. And the simplest way to make sure that you're eating fats that will kind of help your fat loss is just to aim for naturally occurring fats that are in food. So think eggs, think avocados. Nuts are a little bit tricky. Full fat dairy, these types of things, fats in fish, fatty fish, these are really, really wonderful fats. They'll slow gastric emptying, they'll help keep you full. If you're adding a lot of added fats, so simple oils, butters, these things tend to be not very filling. So we know this from the satiety index, that actually food that is naturally occurring, fats that are naturally occurring are pretty great, whereas added fat that you get in like pastries, chips, crisps, cookies, this is a nightmare. It's probably the most hyperpalatable ingredient in the whole diet. So aim for natural fats. Next up, watery carbs. When you're choosing your carbs, go for carbs that have more volume. So instead of crackers and kind of bread and cereals, you're thinking about potatoes, rice, pasta. These kind of watery starches are actually, according to the satiety index, they're actually very, very filling foods. They're often overlooked. Bodybuilders eat them like forever and a day because they know that they help keep them full whilst providing them energy for their workouts in the form of carbs. So if you're going to choose carbs, go for watery carbs that have lots and lots of volume, and they'll do a wonderful job of keeping you full. And then finally, juicy fruit. Fruit gets a terrible rap. it really doesn't deserve it. I can show you studies, you know, these paleo studies where people are losing kilos, 5 kilos, eating more than a pound of fruit a day. What fruit, when it's juicy fruit, they act more like vegetables. Yes, they have a little bit of fructose. The fructose is actually, you know, it can actually help with satiety. It can actually help keep you full. So don't be afraid of fruit, and if you're choosing your fruit, just go for juicier fruit. So instead of kind of bananas and kind of, you know, mangoes, the ones that are kind of higher energy density, go for your berries, go for your citrus, go for your apples. They're juicy fruit. They'll give you more volume. They'll help keep you full. Finally, putting it all together, the filling food plate, very, very simple. Let's start with a fist of lean protein up in one corner, half a plate, colourful vegetables, then a thumb or two of natural fat, some watery carbs in the remaining quarter, and then if you want, you can substitute in some juicy fruit for those veggies because they've both got low caloric density, and that is it. Very, very simple. Putting together our 5 filling food groups without demonizing any food in particular. If you want to demonize a food group, junk food is the one that you want to chase. But, you know, telling people that they can't eat fats or they can't eat carbs, it really hasn't worked out for us in the past. Whether it will in the future, I'm not so sure. So that is it. Our 5 best foods. Hope you enjoyed that. Make sure you check out the filling plate. And next up, we are going to be talking about calories, because calories, you don't have to track them, but understanding them is very, very useful.